Hi, I'm Nicolene Peck. I'm a communications and parenting expert, and in this video, we're going to be talking about how to co-parent with different parenting styles. We all have different personalities, right? My personality and the way that I communicate is going to be different than my husband's personality and the way that he communicates. And we're bringing these two people together to parent the children. Now, I know that there are many people involved with raising children. Sometimes there's grandparents who are helping with parenting or other people who are involved. And it's really important to try to come together a little bit, even though there are differences in our personalities and even our ways of communicating with each other. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what me and my husband did, and then I'm going to share with you some key points that you can use as you are trying to get unified, but still maintain your unique differences. A few days before I married my husband, he divulged something to me. He said, I have to tell you something. I am not good at patience. In fact, it's something I have struggled with my whole life. He said, I've been praying for patience. I just want you to know, for our future family, I'm working on it, but I'm not good at it. I was really glad that he took the time to tell me right then, and I still chose to marry him, even though he said that he had a struggle with patience, because I was so impressed by the fact that he had analyzed himself and that he said he was taking steps to work on this imperfection that he thought he had. So this process, even though he didn't know it at the time, was actually the process of self-government. He had decided that the best version of himself would be a patient version of himself, but he wasn't patient yet, so he was going to keep working at it until he got himself there. That's the process of self-government. That's what I'm known for. That's what I teach on my website, teachingselfgovernment.com. Self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. So my husband was true to his word. That is, not patient. In fact, if there was one person that was going to have a problem with losing his temper with our children that started coming along, it definitely was him. Now, that's not to say I was perfect. I've definitely changed over the years in many, many ways, but my patience was better than his. So there was a time when my husband and I decided that we were going to do treatment foster care for troubled teens. We had 2 babies of our own, and my husband was changing careers. So we decided that it would be a good idea for me to stay home with our children and bring in other children as a side job while he was trying to get his other business and education underway. So this proved to be a life-changing experience for our family. In fact, it was absolutely revolutionary for my husband. As part of this treatment foster care that we did, we had to have specific training for how to handle some of the most extreme behaviors, and they taught us skills. Many of these skills I'm known for teaching all over the world. In fact, these skills were somewhat no-brainers for me because I actually had started teaching myself these skills when I was 14 years old. I share stories about that in other videos, so I'm not going to bore you with that here, but I will say these skills absolutely changed me. They changed the relationship with me and my parents, and they changed my husband. So as he learned key skills like following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences and disagreeing appropriately, as well as many other skills that we taught the children and ourselves, he realized that those were key things that he could use to increase his patience. And he changed. He became such an incredible, patient man to these children. So for 4 years, we did treatment foster care, and he kept himself following a script. Yep, a script. Now, I know that seems pretty contrived, maybe a little too pre-planned for normal parenting interactions, but it is the way a self-governed person behaves. They plan, this is the way I want to talk about something, and then they follow through. In fact, did you know you already have a script inside your head? Well, you absolutely do. My husband just chose to get rid of that script and replace it with a new one. After a little while of using the script, after 4 years of really mastering it, we decided it was time for our family to be done with foster care, and we started having more children of our own. Well, right after we decided it was time to be done with foster care, my husband came to me and he said, well, at least we don't have to do all that talking and all those skills anymore. And I went, What? Of course we have to do those skills. We've been raising our own children with them and they're good. And he says, well, our children don't have any problems. They're fine. And I said, well, there's a reason they're fine. They're fine because we've been using all of these skills. And he's like, no, I don't like all that talking. I don't want to have to do that anymore. Well, I didn't know that the whole time, even though he was thriving, he felt like he was definitely having to talk too much. So for a good year and a half, maybe 2 years, he decided not to use any of the skills. Now, this was a time that was incredibly hard for me, especially because I knew he knew better. And so I wanted him to use those skills, but he didn't want to. He wanted to just go back to his old personality, which was pretty impatient. And so sometimes he was using a little bit harsher tone with the children. He was getting impatient with them, sometimes getting angry with them, and I wasn't. So how did I manage and how did he manage during this time when we were parenting our children together, but we were doing it drastically different? So I know everyone is so different. In the comments below, how about you tell me, how are you different from your spouse? And then I'll know for future videos if I need to hit on something else. But let's get into these tips. The first thing we need to remember is that we are not going to always get the ideal. That's just how it is. Sometimes we hope for the ideal, but it's not going to always happen. That doesn't mean that we stop moving toward the ideal ourselves, but we can't force other people to come along the journey with us. So we have to respect where the other person is at. In the situation with my husband, although it was disheartening that he did not want to do the same things that I was doing with parenting anymore, I did need to respect that he had a role in the children's lives. He did have the ability to make his own decisions. He was an adult, and I couldn't tell him what to do. I wasn't his mommy, even though I was the mommy of the other children. But I did decide that for myself, I was going to follow through with my plan. I was going to make sure that I parented in a way that I could be proud of for me. I wasn't going to use him as an excuse for my bad behavior. I was going to go ahead and stay going along with the same skills that I wanted. So remember that just because somebody else isn't on the same page as you doesn't mean that you're off the hook as far as accountability goes for how you raise your own children. You need to do what you know is best for you and respect the other person. Now, what does that mean to respect? When we respect another person, that means that we aren't talking bad about them. And who's the person that you're probably going to talk bad about them most to? The children. So don't talk bad about your spouse to the children. Now, you do need to remember that the children are smart. They recognize when mommy and daddy do things different. And they also recognize when they're little that mom is almost always right. That's just how children think. You need to know that. They think because of that attachment and that bond they have with mommy, and usually because they're with mommy for more hours of the day, that mommy is always right. That means if somebody else does something different, then in their minds, that is wrong. And that person is wrong. And they're wondering when mommy's gonna fix it because mommy goes around fixing everything all the time. So what you have to do is you have to explain to your children that people are different, that their personalities are different, and that sometimes their skills are different. So I explained to my children that I was going to be using these certain skills they already knew, but dad was going to be using some other skills. And those skills would look and feel very differently than the skills I was going to be using. But I told them the skills I taught them would work as they were communicating with dad too. And that if they used the skills I taught them with dad, instead of getting into arguments or things like that, then everyone would be happier. Well, they didn't always remember that because dad would power struggle. And so because he started power struggling and getting emotional because of his impatience, then they started power struggling with him too. But I still prepared them for the difference. So they weren't going to be tattletelling on dad all the time to me. They needed to recognize he was going to do things his way, I was going to do things my way, and that we were going to respect each other. So this brings me to another point. We have to make sure as couples that we talk about what we are going to do, how we are going to handle the problems. Sure, we can't force the other person, but we can say, this is the way that I am going to parent. I am going to teach the children these skills. I am going to correct using these words. Now, that right there is a whole self-government leap, that you would decide ahead of time how you're going to handle it. In fact, oftentimes most people do not plan ahead of time how they're going to handle the problems with the children. And that's the downfall. That's when they lose patience. That's when they start power struggling. The fact that I said that to my husband and then said, what are you going to be doing then, since you don't want to be doing these skills and stuff like that? He said, well, I don't know. I'm just going to tell them to do stuff and I'm sure they'll do it. It'll be fine. Well, what are you going to do when they don't do it? Well, I'll tell them they need to do it. And that's what he told me. And he realized it didn't sound very concrete, but he went ahead with it. He was determined that our children were good enough. We didn't have to use all of these skills that we were using with the foster children. And sadly, it didn't work for him. A key thing I did to make sure I always respected my husband and my children, even though his interactions were going to be different, was I allowed him to maintain ownership of his interactions with the children, which means I wouldn't butt in or cut in. I wouldn't add my 2 cents or tell him he did anything wrong. That's important. And I told him that when I was having an interaction that he needed to give me that same kind of respect. So we decided that when I was correcting a child or teaching a child, I owned that interaction. And when he was teaching or correcting a child, he owned that interaction. That way, even if it wasn't going away, I liked it. I could tell myself I'm backing off from this. It's his interaction, and that's okay. When you do things differently from a person that you work with, then it's really helpful for you to at least unify on principles. And I think my husband and I did that well, even though there was that time for 1.5 years or 2 years when he did not choose to use the skills that we now currently use in our home. He just took a dive for a little bit of time, but he did come back to it. I don't have time to share that part of the story with you today, but I will say that during that time, we were able to focus on principles, key principles. So sometimes your skills might differ, but if your principles are the same, you'll be surprised how often you'll end up going in the same direction and uniting with each other so that there isn't contention or a sense of competition related to the parenting. When you get competitive as husband and wife in the parenting, then you can end up having a lot of problems. And the children notice it and they start to manipulate more as well. Probably the most powerful thing a husband and wife can do, and this is something that I've seen many couples do over lots of years now, is to look at each other's parenting style and decide that maybe both of those parenting styles are just manipulating in a different way. Maybe one is coddling and one is instilling fear. But maybe there's something else in the middle that is a little bit more principled. So I have something called the Parenting Mastery Training. And at this Parenting Mastery Training, it's a 3-day training on self-government. Couples will come and they will learn completely new skills. They'll learn the skills that me and my husband use in our home. They'll learn how to correct with calmness. They'll learn how to check up on things in a way that doesn't feel like nagging. They learn lots of skills to handle the attitude problems, the whining, the disrespect, and to create a feeling of unity, love, compassion, and understanding in their homes. This type of calmness takes time to work on, and it takes skills so that you don't fall into those old habits. So when a husband and wife decide maybe we just reinvent something just for us. I had my way, you had your way, but now let's create our way. That is the most powerful. Year after year, as I train these couples, I see that as they leave both of their old ways behind and decide to be humble enough to learn something new together, then they have the unity required in order to really change the hearts and behaviors of their children. Let me tell you something. Personalities do not go away just because you learn the same skills. My husband is still uniquely him. I am still uniquely me. But we work together in a perfect blend because we have the same scripts, the same words that we're going to use as we correct our children. I want you to find out more about some of the things we say and some of the things we do. And so I invite you to watch my next video, which is the expectation trap versus the cycle for success. Click on that video now, and you will learn a lot more about self-government and about getting on the same page.